Hello everyone, welcome to the next session on SAP Fiori Launchpad and WebIDE training. In the last session, we talked about how to use SAP Theme Designer, and also we discussed how to customize SAP Fiori Launchpad logon screen, as well as provide the custom branding for your company in SAP Fiori Launchpad. In today's session, we will go to the next level in SAP WebIDE and try to understand how we can really enable SAP WebIDE and set up the SAP WebIDE in our systems for UI5 or Fiori based development. We have already discussed in the first session of this training about installation and the variants in which SAP WebIDE is available. So just again a quick repeat of what we discussed is SAP WebIDE is a powerful, extensible web-based integration development tool. It is used to build, debug, test, extend and deploy the Fiori apps using wizards, templates, samples, codes and graphical editors. So that's what exactly SAP WebIDE is built for. SAP WebIDE is available in two flavors. One is SAP WebIDE for Fiori and one is for HANA. So the one which we are going to talk about in this course is purely for the developer perspective, and that is the UI development, not for the HANA native development. So in that itself, you have two different variants. One is the variant which you can run pure locally in your computer, and one variant you can run on HANA cloud platform in a cloud platform. So within the personal edition, which is actually based on a local server called Audience server, it's completely installable and executable and deployable in your local computer. And that's what we have done in our first session. We downloaded it from tools.hana.ondemand.com and installed it in our local computer. And we also saw how to start the web server Orion and then start our SAP WebIDE for the first time. In that session, we also talked about how to configure the destination to connect to our gateway system. That is what also we have discussed in our first session, right? So what exactly again WebIDE is? It's basically helps you to develop, deploy, build and manage entire end-to-end applications, Fiori applications. It is actually sits in the center between the user interface and the different technologies. So you can see here WebIDE in the center, and on top you have the browser, desktop, mobile devices where you exactly execute your applications. Now on the left hand side you have SDK as part of SAP WebIDE. What this SDK includes, includes complete software development kit, which includes different SAP UI5 libraries. Now if you remember our first course, what we did in Eclipse based development, in order to use Eclipse for SAP Fiori development, we have installed a SAP UI5 development toolkit in our first session, if you all remember, to build the UI5 and Fiori apps. So what exactly that toolkit does, it brings in the project type as well as the UI5 libraries, which are bare minimum to run your project, test it, build it locally. And that's what exactly comes pre-packaged along with SAP WebIDE. So this SAP WebIDE comes with lots of SAP, I would say all the UI5 libraries, UI5 core as pre-package. And then you can also add on to it extra toolkits like hybrid application toolkit, overview pages and IoT. So it comes along with SDK, which is your, which is nothing but is your including SAP UI5 core and all the libraries like SAP M, SAP UI Commons, UI Layout, UI Table, all the libraries also comes pre-packaged inside WebIDE. Yeah. Then comes the data sources. So it provides an excellent connectivity to the different data sources like Gateway, HANA Access, or any other REST-based service served on internet. That is also it allows you to do that using configuring destinations. We saw how to configure destination in our first session. I will again repeat it quickly. Then there are different deployment options. Once you build the UI5 application and test it locally, you can then deploy your application on either on a web system or in HANA Cloud platform or SAP mobile platform or or as a native HANA application. At the same time, it also gives you an opportunity to connect your projects and sync with these projects with Git repository. So now we will get in deep of SAP UI5 and also SAP WebIDE to look at how will the development will take place in SAP WebIDE completely. Now, how it is different from your first course which you have taken. In the first course, we were more focused on development of model view controller entities. So we talked about views, we talked about model, we talked about controllers, and then we also saw concepts like router, route match handler, component.js, manifest.json. All these concepts we have understood. Now this is an advanced level of that. Again, all the concepts what you have learned are really important here as well, without which you really will not understand anything. But on top of it, there are some more concepts like you have mock server concept, you have concept for local sandbox, okay, you have concept of neo app.json. So these concepts, you have concept for destination, concepts for HANA Cloud Connector. All these concepts are really important for you to understand. So today's session will be more focused on understanding these concepts and also understanding the structure for a project which we will build in SAP WebIDE. And then a very important topic which you will really not find any much information, but it makes a big difference for you for development, is the dependency on UI5 framework. So we will see when you really have a gateway server where you want to deploy your Fiori application, it actually supports only certain level of libraries, UI5 libraries. But if you develop your application with a higher version of library, it will not be compatible. You really cannot deploy it in the server. Yeah. So that is what also we will quickly look at going forward. So let's begin. Uh, the very first thing, we also know that how to configure a connection to our NetWeaver gateway system from WebIDE is through destination. So what is destination? It is just a connection pointer to an external system from WebIDE. So WebIDE needs to call different systems to consume the real OData service, real OData. So you need to establish a secure connection between WebIDE and NetWeaver gateway, or be any other OData service. For that reason, we really need to create a destination file, and this destination file should include the description, the type of connection, whether to trust that connection or not, the details of the entire connection, all the port numbers, the client, and very important, one property called WebID uses. What is the purpose why you creating the destination? Is it just for consuming OData, or you also really want to use it for your ABAP repository purpose? So that's why we give these multiple properties like OData underscore ABAP, OData underscore gen, UI5 execute ABAP. All these dev underscore ABAP, these properties we specify in our destination, because we really want to do now a lot more than the conventional thing what we did in our first course. So we really got to connect this tool over here, which is WebIDE, to our gateway system, so we can exchange the information between both of them. For example, OData service. So if you really want to build an app which has an OData service available in your gateway system, you really got to connect to it, and that connection happens through destination. So that is what also we will be going ahead and looking into. Yeah. So I have already installed the WebIDE over here in this computer, and I will quickly show you that which folder I have installed it. So let me just quickly go into computer, my C drive, and in this I have a folder called my WebIDE. And you can see here I have extracted everything, and this is this Orion server. And you all remember, once in order to run this, you really need to double click on Orion, yeah, to run this. And once you double click on this, you can see it starts the engine, yeah. And once the engine is started, you can really get into and then access your SAP WebIDE. So the URL will be localhost colon 8080/webide/index.html. Now you really don't need any setup of UI5 SDK, UI5 development toolkit, or Eclipse, or any Tomcat server. You just need this, And what exactly so special about this Orient server now? So what exactly it does? So now with the first course, we already know there is a fundamental problem with browsers. So whenever you are running an application with some domain name, so imagine you have something called a web server. So what is a web server? Is just a container which contains your applications and runs and handles all the requests coming from the browser. So you will be typically having a browser. In this browser, you will be running your app, and this application you will be deploying in this web server. So what exactly a web server is? It is capable of understanding or reading and responding to HTTP based request. Okay, any request which is sent over the network, it is capable of responding to it. Now, so that's what the type of request this web server can handle. So you really need a web server, whether be a local web server or be in a server which is placed on internet, or it is placed on your company's personal network, which is intranet. So that's what exactly a web server does. It is capable of handling HTTP requests. Okay, all the HTTP requests from the browser, because browser only make HTTP requests, and this web server can understand that request. It can queue up the request coming from multiple browsers. It can also manage the sessions for different users at the same time, and um, it basically does all the activity related to the user. Yeah. Now here only your applications are also deployed. So your applications are deployed here. Browser just makes a connection to the web server. If at all there is authentication required, that is also taken care, and then user access the application through the browser. Now user interact with application, and then there are further requests sent to the web server, and web server handles such request and respond it back again back to this HTTP call. So it's a request and response architecture. Yeah, that's what is a very fundamental thing about any web application. Now there is a very fundamental thing what a browser would typically allow us. So if a application is running on a web server, typically a web server will be having a host name and port name. So let's say this is a web server running in a local computer. So it'll have host name as local host and a port number where it is listening to the request. Now what happens is when you try to make a call through your application which is running in the browser to a different host, you are going to get a problem, and that problem is called as CORS. Now instead of going to this web server, if you try to make a call directly to completely different URL, let's say something called http facebook.com, so browsers won't allow this. This is called violation of a very important policy. It's known as CORS, cross origin resource sharing. So any browser which you are using today, they all agreed to one common agreement that they don't allow any calls to a completely different domain uh, other than the domain on which your application is running. So your application is running on localhost, and if you have coded a call making to a different domain, browser will not allow you. So browser cross origin resource sharing will stop you to do so. Okay, it stops really to do so. So if at all you really want to make a call from this browser now to an OData service which is available uh, somewhere in a gateway server. So in our case, there's a gateway server for which the URL is ehp7 dot sap.in, whatever, I don't know, but and then there's a port number 8080 like this. So if you directly try to make a call to an OData service at a different domain name, browser will restrict you to do so. Okay, browser won't allow you. So you cannot really hard code a call or an OData model which is calling an OData service of your gateway. This will be restricted by browser. What is the solution for this? So the solution is you cheat the browser. And how do you cheat it? This web server will help you to cheat the browser. So this web server has a concept called dispatcher. It's called web dispatcher. What the web dispatcher does, any call which you want to really make it to an external server, be the Facebook, be the gateway, You never make it directly from your application. Then browser will not allow you. You always make a call to your server. And this server has a web dispatcher. And through this dispatcher, you dispatch the request to the right server, whichever you want. So that's what we also call it as reverse proxy. This is also known as reverse proxy or web dispatcher to avoid the cross-origin resource sharing issue. So that's why the web dispatcher is so important inside a web server. And that's what exactly this Orion server is doing. It's a web server which is also acting like a reverse proxy server or a dispatcher server which dispatches all your requests to uh, different places. It could be, you really want to reference a JavaScript file which is placed on somewhere called tools.hana.ondemand.com. Yeah, so here you have a sap-ui-core.js file. Yeah, and you want to load this JavaScript file in your browser to make run of your applications, UI5 based application, because you really need Bootstrap for that. Yeah, so any call which is going is always going through this web dispatcher from the browser. So now browser will never see there is a call going to here or anywhere else. Browser will only and only talk to the web server, and it's the web server which is supposed to manage these calls to different servers. And that's what gateway also does. Gateway also redirects all your calls to the different places if at all needed. Now that's what exactly WebIDE also is doing. So in WebIDE, it's an application running, it's a process running on Orion server, which we have it here, which includes a web dispatcher, and it makes a call to all the required resources to load or all the required resources to consume the OData service through the web dispatcher, not directly from the applications. So any path which you really need to code to call OData service or to load the UI5 resources, you never make a call to direct URLs. Never. Okay, you never make a call to direct URLs. You will make a relative path always in your applications. So this is a golden rule. Any call which has been made to load any resources or access OData service, you should always use relative path. Okay, always use relative path to avoid CORS in your applications. But how will this web dispatcher will know now where the call or at which domain it will be redirected to? At which domain it will be redirected to? So it gives, the WebID gives you an option for creating destinations, right? So that's what destinations will do. So destinations will help you to code all the required connections from external server into different files, and this web dispatcher then is capable of reading these destinations, and based on the patterns, so we have a concept called patterns. So whenever it identifies there is a certain pattern, it's going to make a call to respective destinations. So let's say if there is a pattern which says, so I'm just for example, I'm telling you there is a pattern called /sap/opu/odata. If any URL is starting with relative path this, which means routed to gateway. Okay, if any URL which is starting from /destination/ let's say EP7 routed to my ECC server. Okay, if anything starting from /destination/ maybe MH4 routed to my gateway server. Yeah, like this. So all based on patterns, this will be taken care, and these patterns are maintained in a separate file called new app.json. So you will have multiple things now here. So let me again repeat new app.json. What new app.json does? New app.json is one important file which your web server will use to find out the patterns. Based on these patterns, it will realize which destination to use. Okay. So new app.json is a file which you need to maintain in your application mandatorily in order to tell the web dispatcher that based on which pattern, which server will be called or which resources will be consumed. So that's a very important file for your application as far as WebIDE is concerned. So if you are doing pure development in Eclipse, you really don't need this file. Okay, if at all you're doing development using Eclipse, you don't need this file. But if you're using WebIDE, the web server is designed in such a way that it needs an additional file. So what web server will always do, it always look forward for the file called new app.json. It will always look for the same file with same name, with same naming convention. By default, it's hard coded in the web server. So web server, the coding, there is a coding done for web server also. In web server coding, it goes when you start an app, it looks for, it crawls through the entire app and try to find out a file with name new app.json. And based on this file, it reads all the patterns which are maintained here, and it finds for which pattern it needs to call which destination. Okay, and inside the destination you have connections for different servers. Okay, that is the reason why we have new app.json file in WebIDE projects, to connect to different servers at different times. At the same time, also you really need, because this is dedicatedly designed for UI5 based development now. Okay, this is dedicatedly designed for UI5 and Fiori based development. So there is also resources available for UI5 which you need, right? So if you all remember, we really need the resources for SAP UI5, which is your UI5 libraries. So then it also need resources for SAP UI5. So that is also this new app.json should contain the path for the resources as well. So any external communication out of the box, out of this web server, has to be maintained in new app.json. Okay, and based on that, it decides which server to call, what is the URL, and that URL is anyways maintained in your destination. So new app.json just connects your web server, web dispatcher. It tells your web dispatcher which destination to use, and all the destinations are right now locally stored because it's a local development what you're doing. And if you understand this process, it is pretty easy for you to deploy the app later point of time in your ABAP system, in your gateway system, which also we will see an end-to-end scenario. Okay. Now one question here from Ramesh: can we have access multiple destination from one app?
Can we?
Okay.
Yeah, can
Yes.
we access? That's what I meant.
Yeah. So can we access multiple destinations from one app? Yes, it is possible, but typically we don't do. Why? Just to quickly go back to our main architecture, if you really see, Fiori app never talks to multiple systems directly. It always talks to gateway. And then internally you have multiple system alias connecting to multiple systems. And yesterday we discussed, if at all you want results from multiple systems and combine them, you can use parallelization for that purpose. So your Fiori app, if you really look at it, really don't need to talk to multiple systems, but it's possible to have multiple destinations created and keep on changing them just to check. So for testing purpose, you can check, because you are a developer and you got to develop an application which is capable of running in your CRM box or in ECC box, whichever box tomorrow you really want to deploy into. So it's possible, the flexibility is given to you where you can configure multiple destinations. I will show you when we will really get into it, how quickly you can change one destination and see how the calls are being made to the backend. You can really make it change anytime. You can also make a call to multiple things, but ideally not required, because you see your OData services are activated in gateway always, not the backend systems. So that's the single point of contact for you. And yesterday we also understood that even though it's one system, there should be one OData service you will be talking to. You will not be talking to multiple OData services. Now let's see who remember my first course. Which file do we maintain the details, which OData service we are planning to call? Which file do you maintain the detail of OData service which your Fiori app is going to make a call to? Anybody? First
The
course.
destination.
Sorry?
Was it destination? Is it
Destination?
destination?
No. Destination is just a connection to server. Destination doesn't know which OData service you are calling. It is just a connection to your gateway or any other server. It's just a URL and port number and credentials and type of authentication, all that stuff. It never talks about which OData service you are using. Okay, so Tarun has, I think Karun has got an answer. It's component.js, partially correct, Karun, but now it has been moved to manifest.json. Any new project which you create using WebIDE, you will find that entry in manifest.json. So let me quickly note down here which entity is doing what. That's the most confusing part for all the developers. And if you remember this single PPT, what I'm now writing, you will be clear all the time what is available where. So let's start with view. So view contains all the presentation logic, your UI elements. Okay, that's what your view contain. You can also name it as screens. Views are coded in XML language, XML markup. They all are a XML type. Then comes controllers. Controllers will contain all the processing logic. All the processing logic, like when I click on button, what should happen? When I click on a list, what should happen? All that processing logic will be written. Also the navigation logic, like when we land on a view. When we land on a view, what happens? When we land on a view, what happens? That logic we also write inside the controller. Can anybody tell me which method do you use to do this particular logic? Which method? First course, guys, that is very important. First course is hard important. So which method of controller you will use to write the logic? You are very close, Ram, not router, not router. There was a concept which I taught to all of you in the first course where we write down the code when you land to a particular view, when your pattern matches for the router, this method will be executed automatically. I covered that in the first course. If you still have access to the old videos, please go back and check. Perfect answer. Dheeraj has got it. It's route match handler where we write the code. When you land on a particular view and if the pattern matches with your router, that method is going to get executed. So route match handler was the concept which we learned in first course, which is responsible for this. Then also your navigation logic, like you want to instruct the router to navigate to next screen. Yeah, that also is written in the controller. All your processing logic, all your navigation logic, it's all is written. All your service calls related to get, put, post, delete, individual calls, if you're really making, you got to write it in the controllers. Now your binding is being done. That's a very important concept. We really missed it. So binding is also done with view. So we have three types of binding. Can quickly somebody name it? All the three types of binding for me. First course. See guys, how important the first course is. What are all the three types of bindings we have in UI5 and Fiori? Anyone? Quickly. That's really worrying me, guys, if you really cannot answer these things. So we have three types of binding. Yes, I got some answers. Property binding, element binding, and aggregation binding. Perfect. I'm not really getting into deep of it, but please understand these things we have already talked about it. I am not going to talk about these things in this course because it's already covered. That's the fundamental, that's the basic which you all should know. Moving next, we have manifest.json. This is the, I would say, powerhouse for your entire app. This is the powerhouse of your entire app, which includes routing configuration. It includes details of all the router routes, how the views are connected, your patterns, at which pattern, which thing should load. Everything is written here. Your versions of the app is also written here. Your title of the app, which is responsible to be displayed on the screen, is written here. Your I-89 path is also given over here in this manifest.json file. Your UI5 versions, which UI5 library you are planning to use in your app. So there were three sections: sap.app section, sap.ui section. Three sections were there. they were there written into this particular file manifest.json, powerhouse of your application. Going next to component.js, again very important. And now how can I miss this? This is not last but not the least is the OData. Which OData service you really making a call to? So OData service name is also maintained in this, but again remember just now we discussed it should be a relative path. It will never be hard coded path. You will never hard code the path. The reason being, I'll tell you one more reason behind it. Let's imagine you have a dev system, a quality system, and a production system. Yeah, so you have a development system, you have a quality system, and you have a production system. You created a Fiori application. So you created really a SAP Fiori project, and inside this project you're making a call to OData. Now typically if you remember initially when I taught you OData, I directly hard coded the complete URL, which is HTTP the server host colon port name slash SAP slash OPU slash OData slash SAP slash the name of the OData service. So that I've hard coded inside. Now if you do so, imagine what will happen if you hard coded here to your dev system dot port colon port number. If you did that, what will happen? Now you created an app with this. What will happen when you transport this app? When you do the transport of this app to your quality system or be the production system, what will happen? Can anybody guess now what problem you will really get into if you do so? Anyone? What will be the problem if you do so? What will be the problem? Server name is still same. You have hard coded the server name. That's the worst thing a developer will do. It will always and always talk to the service which is there in the development system. But would you really need that way? That's the most terrible mistake which most of the developer does. What is the solution of this? The solution of this is never code the path. Okay, absolute path. Never put the absolute path. Always put the relative path slash SAP slash OPU slash OData slash your service name, whatever it is. Yeah, this is the app. This is not an absolute path, it's a relative path. Now the moment your transport reaches to quality system, it what it does, it whatever quality system domain name you're running your application, you're running your project in the domain of quality server. Now it takes the relative path, it appends it automatically at runtime to the domain, to the host and port name, and it calls this service in quality system. And then once it reaches to production system, there again you're running on different different host and port. So again you have given the relative path, not the absolute path. So it's then calling the OData service of production system. And that is what is being achieved using manifest.json. I will show you in a standard project when it generates. I will show you first generating a standard project using WebIDE, using a template, and we will then crawl through all these these entities one more time to quickly see what are all the stuff which is being done. Yeah. So this is one reason why we should never hard code the path for the server, because then it's not really going to work when your transport reaches to quality in production. And that's what your manifest controls. Your manifest always hold the OData service path, which is a relative path, not the absolute path. Now you will say once the transport rate is reaching, it is already running in the quality system domain name and host number, host and port, so it will connect to the OData service there. It's always relative to the system in which it is running. Then comes the component.js. The first very important thing which it contains is manifest reference. And of course it has three important methods in it: destroy and create content. To generate our first instance of the first view, which is known as app.view. So in create content we create the app.view.xml object, yeah, and place it inside inside some it basically return the object of app.view.xml, which controls the rest of the activities inside. Yeah. Then Another important file, you would typically need it for local testing, not really for server. Index.html file, which is just holds a component container and hence the object of component .js. So remember, one application per application, you always typically have one component.js, and that is named by its namespace. This is one more very important concept we talked about in the last course, namespace. So namespace is the name which is uniquely assigned per application, per component. So your component.js will be, when you create it, you really give a namespace, and your component.js file should exist in that namespace. Yeah, it's basically the path of a root folder. Okay, it's, namespace is nothing but path of root folder under which all the files are present. So all the other paths are relative to this namespace path. Yeah, so it's a path of your web content folder or your web app folder or whatever you call it as, and all the other paths like view path or controller path or any other file is always referenced with that namespace. And then you really want to test it locally, so you need index.html file which has a component container, and that there we embed this component inside component container, and then we put this whole component container in the body of HTML so that user can really test it and see it. Now that's all we have done in a nutshell in the first course. Okay, that's all whole and soul we did end to end in our first course. Now comes over here to WebIDE. Now forget about Eclipse, you are into WebIDE. There is no Eclipse. Okay, there is no Eclipse now. So in Eclipse, actually, we have already downloaded the UI5 development toolkit, so it was supporting most of the things to us. Yeah, Eclipse also uses a web.xml file, which is a web interface file, which takes use of a proxy server, a proxy servlet of UI5 to connect to the remote system. But here we don't have all that stuff. So what we typically have is we really need to now connect to our gateway system. And at the same time, we don't want to hard code the path of our server. So what does the WebID gives you? It gives you destination file. So you need to maintain destination file where you just maintain name of server along with URL. So that's what your destination file should contain. It should not contain OData service name. Your OData service name still goes with your project, because for every project, every Fiori app, it may be different. Yeah. So if you code it in destination file, you can't reuse it. You got my point. If you code your service name in destination file, you can't really reuse it. They made it so flexible. And then per application, you always have an OData service relative path. What you just need the host name and port number to connect to the server, which you will then get using destination file. Yeah. Then second file, which also it has it as new app.json. This is also one more file, guys. It's case sensitive and has to have the same name. So for WebID, this has a special importance. What is that importance is for? To inform the web dispatcher that which pattern will load which or will invoke which server. Also the dependencies on UI5 libraries, UI5 framework. So UI5 framework is also really enhancing a lot, guys. Okay, in couple of years, it has really enhanced a lot. Okay, it has enhanced a lot. So we will also discuss some of these capabilities. So UI5 library is not just the only thing which we really need these days. We also need something called UI5 sandbox, or it's known as Fiori sandbox. Okay, we really need Fiori sandbox. So I will talk about this Fiori sandbox in today's chapter, what this Fiori sandbox is and how it is useful. So all this information, I mean, from where it should get the sandbox, from where it should get the test resources, from where it should get the UI5 core libraries, The bare minimum libraries like SAP.m, SAP.UI Commons, SAP.layout, SAP.table, from where it will get it. All this information is also maintained in new app.json, completely decoupling your actual application logic from the dependency point of view. Okay, so you just need to connect to a server, so that the destination will give you. But once you deploy your app in the actual server, you really don't need the destination anymore, because it's already there in the server, and it knows which it knows which server I'm running into, right? Then you also don't need new app.json at that point of time, because your UI5 resources are also present inside the server. Okay, any gateway server, if you look at, they already has UI5 libraries inside. Okay, I will show you how can you check which library version they have it in the gateway server. Okay, so every gateway server has already the UI5 installed, UI5 framework installed. So your project, your apps are anyways going to use this UI5 project rather than something from remote system. Okay, so it's going to load the bootstrap from local server itself, not really from somewhere else, anywhere else. So your apps are also deployed in gateway server, and it uses the UI5 which is there in the gateway server, and the host and port name for the server itself as a destination, right? But for local development, you actually need these two things. Yeah, you actually need these two things for local development. Now, one very important thing which we have seen, that for the user's point of view, Launchpad plays a very important role, right? We saw it in the previous chapters that a user cannot talk to individual app. User will always talk to Launchpad, and then Launchpad is going to redirect you to the respective application, which is being installed in your front end component. So how can you really make sure that an app which you're developing using local development environment like WebIDE, how can you ensure that it will be properly working in the Launchpad also once you ship it, or once you deploy it in ABAP server? How will it work? So how can you make sure that? So you need really a kind of Launchpad as well, to just make sure that your app, when you deploy it into the server, it will also work. Any questions here? I just heard some voice. No questions? Okay. So you need a local Launchpad, which you really need to make sure that whatever you are developing, it is going to work or not. That's what exactly you really need. So you need a actually local Launchpad, and what that local Launchpad will be is known as Fiori Sandbox. So Fiori Sandbox is nothing but it's a local Launchpad. So what this Fiori Sandbox is, what I'm just talking about, it's actually nothing but it's a local Launchpad for pure local developments. Yeah, that's what this SAP Fiori Sandbox is. It's pure local development. It's a launchpad available to you to ensure that your integration with actual SAP Fiori launchpad will work when you deploy it in the server. Okay, that is what it ensures. Okay, that is what it ensures, that your development which you are going to do it's really going to work in the system when you deploy it in actual ABAP server. Yeah, so that is what also this SAP Fiori launchpad, local launchpad, is going to do. So we will see that how to do the configuration for this local launchpad, and how to make use of this local launchpad while developing in the local environment. How will it help you? Yeah, so for that you need to load some test resources. Okay, there is a test resources library which SAP UI5 also provides you, and you really need to load these test resources to really make this local launchpad working in your local computer, right? It should simulate the actual launchpad. Okay, it should just simulate the actual launchpad. So that is what exactly our local launchpad or the sandbox is going to do. So WebIDE is
Yeah,
not a tool. Mhm.
right, I understand. What I meant is the application, the one we have created using WebIDE, can
Mhm.
we still deploy
Access.
into the...
Yes, you can access. So what is the, can anybody again quickly remind me, which is the entry point for business users to access your Fiori apps? Anybody? Which is the entry
Launchpad.
point? It's the launchpad, right? So SAP has already made it available. SAP Fiori Launchpad is available with SAP NetWeaver Enterprise Portal. So you can find documentation for that. So if you already have the Launchpad, concept known to you, there is a way to activate SAP Fiori Launchpad in NetWeaver Enterprise Portal as well. You just got to go and just try to find some documentation for that. I didn't do it, guys, to be very honest. I didn't try this because I really did not have the right infrastructure with me. But yes, it's possible. Okay, it is possible. Okay, it is possible. So just explore information about that. Use how to activate SAP Fiori Launchpad for Enterprise Portal. You will get your answer. Yeah. The local sandbox. So let's continue. So now this Fiori local sandbox, local launchpad for pure local development purpose. So we'll also see where exactly this sandbox is coming from and how it is launching. There's one more concept called local server. Okay. It's also known as mock server. Now what happens is, imagine a company where you just join the company and they're really trying out, struggling hard to get the Fiori apps running for their existing business scenarios. And sometimes it happens that standard Fiori app doesn't really help them to go for the implementation. So in such cases, they want to go for pure custom development, but they really don't have a clue where to start from. So what the business typically do is they will sit and they will do some brainstorming. And now as a UI developer, they will hire you in the company and they expect you as a UI developer to give some inputs. And what would be the major input from your side should be is the UI mockups. So they expect you to develop something based on the wireframes what they provide. So what is a wireframe? It's nothing but some kind of tool what they use to create the mock screens or just demo screens. It can be even some splash tools, or they can also use simple graphical editors to build the UI mockups. And now your duty will be to make these mockups converted into a Fiori-like app, eh? And then demonstrate the capability what Fiori has. But where will you get the data from? You need data to be displayed in the Fiori app to make it really look like working. So for that purpose, what SAP have done, if your OData services are not ready, still you can create sample data, provided that you have defined metadata XML for the OData service, and sample data can be created. And this mock server, run your application with mock server. So mock server gives a simulation to gateway as if it's a gateway, and provides you runtime support for HTTP methods, especially the get method, because most of the time you have a transactional app where you really want to project some data, and then you want to call the OData service, get the data, and then get associated entity set data. So you really want to simulate an end-to-end application through completely local environment, and that's what all your tools are, to really build an application which can run completely in a local system, without any gateway server, without any launchpad, without anything else. It can completely run in a local computer, local environment, uh, without even server, without even OData services. Okay, so these are all the four important concepts which we have now new as an add-on to the previous course. So in previous course we learned all these amazing things, but now what next? This is what is the heart of the new application which gets built. Now SAP WebIDE, as I also mentioned, it gives you ready to use templates, ready-made templates are provided. So what these ready-made templates are does, they generate the basic outline structure for your app. Okay, so basic outline structure for your app can be quickly created by SAP WebIDE templates. And this is what is very important now for us guys as a Fiori developer. Never ever try to start things from scratch like we learned in the previous course. So we in previous course we yes we to have a deep understanding we really getting into it and we started things from scratch like writing the first project and then creating our views, creating our controllers, creating models, creating the local files, storing them, instantiating, configuring the router, route match handler, everything we did from scratch just for understanding. Now we already have a deep understanding, so we can right away start with a ready-made template available and choose the type of application we really want, and it generates automatically the structure, basic outline structure for your app, and then you keep enhancing it because there is a very important thing called standard, following standards. Now if you try to write down everything on your own, okay, with the conventional approach what we did in the first course, there will be couple of problems. Point one, you may lose out on standards. So there are a lot of new standards like scaffolding templates. You should always code the relative path of the URLs. You should have unit tests. You should have a new scaffolding templates. You should probably not use a control which is available in the latest version of UI5, but your server is in a different version, and then you have a compatibility issue when you really deploy it in the server. So these things matters a lot, and all the standard outline like you should have proper grouping of controllers, models, views, fragments, formatters, different JS files, utilities. The grouping has to be there. So your folder structure has to be organized. Your component JS has to be kept inside. Your router configuration, your manifest JSON, your neo app JSON, your mock server, all these things if you start creating from scratch, it's going to take you months to start with a fresh project. So that's why WebIDE templates are available. You can quickly get started with it, pick up a template based on your nearest need, and then create your project outline structure in just minutes. And then you have the depth knowledge on each entity, what exactly each artifact does, keep modifying it, and then finally once you're satisfied, your business approves the design and everything looks okay. You also did a testing with your real OData service connecting locally from a remote server which is having actual OData service through the destination. You are good to go. You deploy it and it's going to work beautifully without any problem. It will also have a seamless integration with Launchpad because you already locally tested with Fiori Sandbox. Yeah. So that's the whole idea for a custom app development. Now there's another scenario where already there is a standard app available out of the box. You have activated it, but now the business really want a change. So they can want to change in additive way or destructive way also. Right? For example, they just want an additional field to be added on the UI, but just not on the UI. Sometimes you would really need a support from OData side as well to add that field, because if you really want to post the data back to the backend system and the field is not exposed in the entity set, how will you do this post? You really need to enhance your OData service. So anything and you all know, you all worked on SAP in some in your lifetime, some places, that whenever you want to change something standard, you cannot really do that so easily, right? Or you can't really do that. Anything which you really want to custom, okay, anything you really want to enhance or change out of what SAP gives you, it has to be a Z object, Z or Y object. It has to be customer namespace. It cannot be that you can modify SAP delivered objects. So we will see also extensibility concept of OData as well as Fiori apps. So if customer or your business really want to use a standard Fiori app out of the box, at the same time some minor modifications like hiding input fields, adding new fields in the OData, removing some block of data, changing the flow logic little bit here and there, you know, introducing a new screen somewhere in the middle. All these small changes, the enhancements, you can really do it by extensibility concept, and SAP WebID is built for it. Believe me, Eclipse is really a pathetic tool for doing extension. Okay, so anything related to extensions, if you really want to try out, really use WebIDE. That's the motive, guys. But I will also show you how bad this Eclipse IDE is in terms of extensions. If you really want to do some extensions, how bad the Eclipse, it's very bad. Eclipse is very bad tool. uh, it's ridiculous, I mean, but WebID is really cool in that sense. So it's purely built to design, deploy, test, develop, and deploy final finished product into SAP or HANA Cloud Platform or any other server. So it's a complete solution what WebID is to help you end to end with almost everything. And it's fast, it's quick, because you can quickly start with your fresh custom Fiori app in minutes without really worrying about. Even see, we learned a lot, guys. This is, I mean, if I would say from my end, I really it's really hard that one person know this much. It's really hard because we really learn these things in depth. I've seen people working in projects since last 1 year, 2 years in Fiori projects, and they really do not understand each and every artifact. They don't really understand what is the meaning of component JS, and they can't even explain it. But we did it in the depth because we know what each entity and artifact does, and that's what the real learning is. And now you can also, with this one slide, if you keep it in your mind, guys, I guarantee you nobody can touch you. This is just one slide which has the information of every artifact, which artifact is developed and designed for what purpose. This is the one slide which I always keep it with me in my pocket. In my wallet, I always keep a photo of this particular slide, a printout of this in my wallet, so that I always remember which file is doing what. And if there is a problem in certain area in my application, where exactly I need to really get into and pitch into and work on. Yeah, because this is the heart. This is the place where we know what is going on where. Yeah. So let's go ahead and now create our first Fiori app using WebIDE. So I have already configured the destination. Let me quickly show it to you. I got a couple of emails from some of you that your destinations were not working. I'm really not sure whether I can help you, but what I will try to do is I'll try to send these files which I have created to connect to my backend systems. Yeah. So maybe just copy paste these files and just try to modify address of your server, because I already tested them and they're really working fine. So one very important golden rule, that your file should
So,
not have any extension. Yes, yes, please.
yeah, that was the extension issue. Though I thought I removed it, looks like there was a .txt.
Ah,
So that's
okay.
what.
Okay, so yeah, so you can see here a practical example. Somebody was already trying out I think Ram was trying out, Ramesh was trying out in a connection to a gateway server through this destination, and he has created a file with .txt extension. Now, as you remember, in our first chapter also I discussed, to create these destination files, you should not use any extension. You can of course create a txt file where you can write everything, and then, but when you're saving it, remove the extension. Don't save it with any extension. So now, if I quickly show you this file, what I've done is, again, the same thing what we discussed in the first session. I've written the connection to my front-end server, which is my gateway. The name is I'm keeping as gateway HTTP connection. Purpose is OData BAP UI5 execute dev app, and the name of the server is AHE, and this is the server URL. Yeah. Now you must say, Anubhav, it's EHP7, which means you're referring to backend. No, guys. No, I'm not referring to backend. Let me quickly show you. This is my front-end server AHE. You can see AHE. Now, best way to know what is the URL for your front-end is go to browser and open your Launchpad, because your Launchpad never runs in the backend server. It always runs on front-end server, believe me. So you can see here, this is the URL of my front-end server. ehp7prd.sap.in 8200 is the port number. So watch this very careful, guys. It's very important concept as well. You can have the same URL, same host name for your backend and front end, but the port number will be different. So in this case, my front end has port number as 8200. Okay, this is the port number, and the URL host is this. Okay, and if I just go back to my backend and try to run one OData service in backend, let's see what is the URL it produces. So I connect to my backend quickly and go to meet service transaction and pick up any random service from here. Okay, any random service from here, just to see the response. So I go to gateway client and execute this service to check its metadata. just to see the URL. And now you see this is the URL for my backend, ehp7prd.sap.in, but port number, notice 8048. That is the port number at which my services for backend are running. Though the host name is same, port number is different, 8048 for my backend. And if you see for my front end, what was it? It was 8000, I think. 8200 it is, see? So though my host name is same, but the port number is different for front end and back end both. And that's why I've created two destination. One, if at all, I probably will never connect to this backend directly. Believe me, I will never connect. I would always need a destination for my front end, never for back end, because that's my architecture. I always have a hub based, gateway hub based scenario where I have a front end, and then through the system aliases is the secure RFC connection. I'm connecting to backends from my front end. Yeah, so I would not need it, but just just for the sake of understanding, I created this one as well. Another one which is for my backend. And if I show you this one, you will really see I've coded here the URL path for 8048, which is my backend port number, and 8200 is my front end port number. Yeah, so remember this thing. This is what I've done over here in this case. So AHE, which is which I've named it as my gateway, will be my front end server. So now I have started this Orion server already. You can see here I've started Orion, and I will just quickly go back and connect to my WebIDE. So it's pretty simple. Open just your browser and type localhost, port number is 8080 slash webide slash index.html to launch SAP WebIDE. You can see it launched Orion. Logon page. I've already created a local account, and this all we have done in the past session, the session number 1 of this course, where I showed you how to download, how to install the local WebIDE. Now this brings me to the point, guys, you really don't need any server. If you are enthusiastic about learning Fiori development, UI5 development, you really literally don't need any server, any gateway server at all to build a Fiori app. You don't need any gateway server. Complete local development can be supported by WebIDE. You have a POC in your mind, a proof of concept. You want to open up your own startup, want to build a Fiori app. You can try out something on your own. You can completely do it locally without any server, without any gateway. Just install SAP WebIDE and get started with your development from your first Fiori app. Yeah. So say create new account, enter the details here, and once it's created, you can just log in from here. So I've already created one. Remember, in the first chapter we already did it. So I just connect to this. Oops, or maybe I just got to create it. I'm not sure whether the data is mismatched. So click on sign up. Oh, cool. It already exists, but why it's not allowing me to log in then? Let me try. Invalid password. Why? Maybe I done some mistake. Ah, don't tell me. 1 second, guys. I think, yeah, I remember. Good. Cool. So you can see this is the launch screen for WebIDE. Now, cool. So we are on the first screen here. This is what you will see when your WebIDE launch, completely running on local system. You really don't need anything, guys, to make it really run. Right now, we quickly switch to this option, which is called as code editor or the development option. And here you will see Eclipse like page. Yeah. Now on the left you have your project explorer, where you can explore different artifacts of your project and all the projects as well. You have a search option, you have a save option, execute option, and the menu bar on the top. On the right you have some more options related to searching for a specific string in or entire project or in a specific file. Then you have a connection to Git repository. We'll talk about it. What is Git? How can it help you to manage all the code when you're working really into a team? So maybe you are the first one which got hired for Fiori in your team or in your company, but over a period of time you will grow more and more senior, and there will be more people joining you together. You will really make it a big team, and then you really need to have a problem like, if I do a change, how come it will reach to my colleague? And if we both do a change same time in the same file, how can it will be synced, right? All these things can be managed by something called Git repository. So we'll see how and where we can manage all our project and the code by creating a Git account, setting it up and connecting WebIDE to that Git account, generating the secure keys, to talk to the Git so that it don't pop up again and again for passwords. All these things we'll discuss. And then you have this third section, which is for the history of changes. So here you can see all the changes which you have pushed down to the Git repository. You can see who is done what change on what date. So you can really play the blame game. You can fire the person. Okay, oh my God, he's messed up on 27th in the evening when everybody was sleeping. He really did something terrible in my project, and I really want to fire him. So all these things you can really check here in this history section. And then this nice section which I really love about WebIDE is this API reference. So in Eclipse based development, we just used to get the code completion. It's a terrible editor, I must say, but WebIDE is really advanced, and it's been really built for creating Fiori apps. Yeah, so here you will get the reference for each control and the APIs directly on the right side. You don't have to switch from WebIDE or any other window to your UI5 Explode SDK. You don't need that. We get complete reference embedded over here itself. And finally, the last section is outline of the code. So you typically see we sometimes build very complex views. So if you want to look at the hierarchy of the view, the structure of the view, you can really use this outline section to look at the view. How will your view look like? So we will explore these sections more in detail. So let's get started with our first project. So what we have done till now, we installed WebIDE, we started the Origin server. Before doing that, we just kept our server file without any extension, a destination folder, yeah, so that it can connect, communicate to my front end server, yeah. So now I'm going to start with a new project. So right click here, say new, and I say project from template. This is what really you need to really get started. And now over here you can choose available different templates. Now one very important thing, guys, available versions. This plays a very important role when you're building an app from scratch for your company. Your company already has a Fiori server, Fiori front-end server, and that Fiori front-end server already has UI5 framework installed. So if you choose, let's say, library version 1.36, which is latest supported by WebIDE right now in this case, and your server, which is your gateway server, it has SAP UI5 version as 1.28. The project which you're building, the custom application which you're building, will work locally beautifully. But the moment you deploy this application to your gateway server, it will cause a dump. It will say, I cannot really adjust this latest course according to backward compatibility. So this, so it's not really like, you are moving from older version to new version. You are actually moving to new version to older version. So you create here in a newer version, which is 1.36, but in your server, the version of UI5 framework is 1.28. So how come this project will be compatible there? It won't run. And then your whole development goes for a crap. Yeah. So be very careful choosing here the right version when you're building a custom application for you. Now, what is the way? How can I secure myself to check which version the server is into? My gateway server is into. Very simple. Let me guide you with the steps. Very simple steps. So come to your front-end server, SAP Fiori front-end server, which is AHE in this case for us, and just go to transaction SICF. And now here you can just enter the service name as ushell service. Okay, sorry, not ushell, it is usually service is for launchpad, you need UI5 underscore UI5. That's the service name you really need to enter. Say execute. And you will see here SAP public BC UI5. SAP UI5 library called via HTTP out of MIME repository. This is the service which is responsible for providing the browser the UI5 libraries like SAP UI Commons, SAP.m, basically the bootstrap. What you load during bootstrap is provided by this particular gateway service. Yeah. So right click on this and say test the service, and let's see what happens. So it will launch the browser for you and shows you which is the version your server for UI5 is running into. Yeah, so let's quickly see what response it gives me. So voila, you see what an amazing thing. So you can see it tells you SAP UI Core Bootstrap available at this location, and the latest version which my server is right now is on to 1.26. See guys, it's on 1.26. Yeah, so then I'm putting myself into risk if I'm creating a WebIDE project from template on 1.36, because once I deploy this project later point of time in the server, it will not work because my server which I'm using, my gateway service to deploy my Fiori app is on UI5 version 1.26. So can anybody tell me what exactly you will do here to create a project which remains compatible to your server? Obviously, pick 1.26. What an obvious answer. So you really got to pick here 1.26. But you see, SAP is saying MMD, SAP Wi-Fi 1.26, it's deprecated. But still, they do provide this option. But it's they're just saying that it's deprecated. But still, you can really choose it. Okay. Now it's a very old version, which means the server which we are using here, guys, it's really, you know, a pretty old server. They really don't have the latest add-ons updated. Yeah, so it's a pretty old server, but that's the hard reality I do have. I could not really arrange or find a server which is probably on latest NetWeaver 7.5 or probably the higher add-on on NetWeaver 7.4 where I have you know, these latest libraries available. But there is a way, so what exactly this UI?
Sir, I have the 7.5. If you want, you can use it.
Sorry,
I have 7.5.
you have got an access for 7.5 NetWeaver?
Yes, sir.
So can you please send me the detail of your server guy? I will contact him and try to arrange this server so that I can also show some latest things like configuring end-to-end scenario for SAP workflow. So I
Okay,
really wanted to show that one end-to-end application where I can show you how can you build a Fiori application for your workflow scenario. For that, I really needed SAP Gateway 2.0 because that's the bare minimum I would really need. And I could not arrange a server for that. So please do send me the email. Hopefully, if I can get that server, I will try to also show you guys, because there was a couple of requests which I've received from emails from some of you that Anubhav, if it's good, if you can show us some scenario on related to the workflow. How can we create a Fiori app out of a workflow scenario? So I wanted to do that, though I have you know, gone to multiple companies like IBM and Capgemini. There I've seen latest servers where they really use it for project, but it will be not good from my side if I take their servers and provide you guys the training on that. It's not right. I won't like doing it. So usually what I do is I arrange these servers from outside. So the people who are hosting these servers, I just try to look at on internet and just find some reference, and from there I arrange that. So unfortunately I could not arrange one. Please send me the details, I will check it out, and if it's really helpful, maybe we can cover a lot more. But yes, in your company also you may face this kind of trouble where they are still on old NetWeaver version, or the add-on which they are really using for UI is pretty old. What will you do to upgrade? At least just the UI5 version, if at all you want to really upgrade, there is a way. There is a way which helps, which is helpful. So what you need to understand, the bottom line for that. The bottom line is with SAP NetWeaver Gateway 7.4. Okay, SAP NetWeaver Gateway 7.4 up to 7.4, the maximum version which is supported is 1.26.31. Okay, this is the version which is supported up to NetWeaver 7.4, and then also up to, sorry, starting from the lower version, and this is the version 1.26. So basically 1.24 to 26, and up to what it is supporting is up to 1.32. This is what it supports. Now from NetWeaver 7.5 onwards, you can support something greater than 1.32 and more. Okay, so this is the bottom line. Okay, then within this also there is a indicator which is for support pack. Now support pack 10 will only support maximum up to 1.26.31. Support pack 11 will also support 32. So that matrix is already given on help.sap.com. You will easily find it. But if at all you really want to upgrade the SAP UI5 version in NetWeaver Gateway, you can really do that. So what you need to do is go to SAP Service Marketplace and download this SAP UI5 client and mention the version of your UI5 library which you want. So 1.28 is what I've downloaded. Now if you right now see in the server, we are running maximum on 1.26. So now I will show you how to update it to 28, because based on the 7.40 add-on, I can only go up to 1.28 in this server. So I've downloaded 1.28 from internet, from Service Marketplace, kept it in my local computer, and now I will go ahead and upgrade the UI5 version in this server to 1.28. Let me show you the steps for that. So the first step is, and this all should be done in the front end server. The first step is you should really increase the work process timing, because sometimes this update takes a pretty long time. So there is a work process which is called dialog work process, takes care of this report execution. You really need to increase the time for the dialog work process, so that you can do it in RZ10, I think. Yeah, no, RZ11. So just go to RZ11 and enter the parameter name. The name of the parameter is rdisp slash max up run. Put a star, press F4. Oops. Let me just max and say star. And it's basically the timeout time for dialog work process, WP runtime. This is the one, say display. And we got to change this value from 600 seconds to probably 12,000, so that if at all it's going to take some time. Remember, this is a very critical change. Even ideally the updation for UI5 version you are not supposed to do as a developer. It is a task of basis guy. But just for knowledge, like we learned also a little bit on installation, if you have a good idea about it, you can guide your basis guy that yes, you can really change the version for SAP UI5, upgrade it in the server to certain limit. It's possible. And then you need to go back and create a transport request, so that all your quality and production can also be updated automatically. So just create a transport request in SE01, create a transport request of type workbench request, and I just name it as updating, or I would say upgrading UI5 to 1.28. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just create this transport request. You can see the transport request is created. Just copy this transport request, and now you have to come back to SE38, and there is a report program available from NetWeaver support pack 10 and 11. From 7.4 support pack 10 and 11 onwards, there's a program available through which you can really update it. It's called /UI5/UI5 underscore upload patch to MIME. So we're basically upgrading or updating the latest patch of SAP UI5 library to the MIME repository, and that's the one which we need to execute. So just say execute, and now here you got to mention the file which you downloaded from Service Marketplace. It's there on my desktop, so let me just pick it up. And now right now I just, if you're really cautious, you would also try to do some test mode run to check if everything is okay, it won't disturb anything. You can also do a test mode and enter your transport request number and say execute, and just say remember my decision. So now it just unpackaged this particular file, analyze if all the libraries are intact into this file. It's an authenticated file with the proper things into it. Everything is okay, and that's what your test results is going to do. So it will unpackage this file, it will upload in SAP server. After unpackaging, it analyzes if all the dependencies are correctly maintained, if there is any discrepancy in the file versions, or if there is a problem with some of the files in the middle are missed or not. All these things, consistency check basically it does. And after everything is okay, you can really do an actual run, which is then going to upload the latest version, which is in this case is 1.28. Is I'm trying to upgrade my server to instead of 1.26. So that's what it'll do. It'll update the entire UI5 library in the server. So this is one technique which ideally you should not do, but you can tell your basis guy that I desperately need 1.28. So please help me. So you see it's dumping. Looks like there is some problem. Even I see this program is also defective over here, because there were some defects in this program which were then fixed in the more support packs what SAP delivered. I found some notes about it, but I don't think so the notes are implemented in this server, so we really cannot run it. Let me just try running it once again, not within the test mode, but just try this running directly. I'm not sure. I don't think so it's going to work, but just giving a try because it's just a sandbox system. So I can really try out these things. So it's not really working, it's not updating it, but typically if you have a proper consistent server and a proper consistent file which you downloaded, it is really going to update the library for SAP UI5 in the server. And then you have a higher version, so of course you can go and tell your WebIDE, yes, I'm on 1.28, so please go ahead, and I don't really want to use something deprecated, please go ahead and use 1.28 and get started with my development. Yeah. So this is a very important step, guys. I really seen in my career following a lot of developers without really knowing what version they have in the gateway system for UI5. Just got started with whatever they saw in some demo video somewhere on internet about WebIDE, learn WebIDE in 30 minutes. WebIDE end-to-end application development in easy 6 steps. These quick tablets they've taken, they really did not know that it's not fixing the problem, but these were just steroids, which which gives you a temporary relief of the pain, but you're really going to go through bigger pain in upcoming time. So be very careful of these steroids what you take it from internet, because they really just trying to gain some fame and popularize thing, but they really do not explain the depth if you really going to get into some problem later point of time. So be very careful with this version, guys, because there is also one more important factor why I am emphasizing on this is because SAP is really innovating their versions of SAP UI5, and based on that your application development is also affected. So if you see this 1.26 in this version of SAP UI5 framework, there were a template called scaffolding template which they used to use, and that was more like a controller which they used to inherit from a standard SAP UI5 controller. Okay, that is what they used to do it, which we will also see now once we check out a standard Fiori app, which is, let's say, leave request app or any purchase order approval app. I will check out from the server. That time you will really see the code what is written there. It looks like pretty old style of coding, very old style of coding. You won't even find manifest.json in those projects because they're very old projects, very old. And that's why we are now, can anybody tell me what version of UI5 framework it's right now latest in the market? Anybody? What is the latest version of SAP UI5 framework in the market? Anybody? Nobody? No, not 1.38. It is 1.42 point something. So how do you know? How do I know that? It's very simple. So going back to the basics. So if I just quickly go back to the developer guide for SAP UI5. So let me just go back here to our developer guide, and you can see on the top right corner the version 1.42.8. This is the latest and greatest version right now in the market, and you see what is new in this as compared to old versions. Remember our basics, guys. This is the first lesson I started when I started teaching you UI5. This is the place where you need to always come and check, guys, things what's going on in this world. This world is really changing so fast. You need to keep yourself updated about it. So here is where you can really check what's going on. What is the latest version? It's 1.42, but see, WebIDE is supporting up to only 1.38. Yeah. Now, how these versions are really evolved, you can actually see the entire history here, starting from 1.26. So you can see this was 1.26, and from here, what was there in 26, all these small things, and then what happened in 1.28, what they've got. They've got XML-based templating. They've got OData support for OData version 4.0. They've got um, composite types. Then they've got message handling, new message class, popovers. They've got routing concept was introduced in 1.28. So router was not there earlier. Before this, you used to use event bus concept for navigation. So anything which is built on 1.26, you will not see router. You will not see manifest.json. You will not see these things. You will not see these latest controls what they've introduced. Control improvements. These things you will not see if it's a pretty old version, like in our case right now we have it. And then if you come 1.30, what happened? So they have produced these ready-made templates. They've introduced master detail and work list, two standard templates they've introduced along with WebIDE. And then you see demo kit improvements. They've enhanced this explode app improvement. Some new features have come in 1.30. That's what they did. And then what is new in 32? They've got smart templates in 1.32, and this is why it's called smart templates, because these templates have more capability to adapt based on devices. Yeah, you have a lot of different controllers being introduced in this, which you can inherit, generic controllers which you can inherit, and have most of the code written in the super class, and you just inherit it. Hence you have ready-made code available. You have got overview pages, these kind of controls you've got. You got UI5 Inspector, very amazing tool. You might not have heard about it, guys. SAP has also developed a tool called UI5 Inspector, just like your DOM Explorer. When you press F12, you just get a simple DOM. But after you install this plugin for UI5, you really can see this control type. See sap.m.standard list item. What type of control they really used. You will get the information in the DOM for that. So this was also introduced Inspector in 32. So if you're using UI5 version, and you see this amazing library, it's called 3D visualization. Okay, for all the 3D objects to play around with, they have got this new library, 3D viewer library. Yeah, so it's a viewer library. So this is what they've introduced from 1.32. So you can really go back and check if your client want a 3D make use of this SAP UI VK library, Visual Interaction Toolkit library, and the gateway server is on 1.30. You need to really tell your basis guy that you really need to upgrade it to 1.32 so that I can really make use of this library. Because if you do it, if you make use this library in WebIDE, the moment you deploy it will not work on the server, because your server is on lower version of UI5, and they are clearly mentioning what support has been given in which library. So it's evolving. You can see how it reached to 1.40 and 42 ultimately. And then in 34, what they've done, they've fixed some security issues. The mock server concept was introduced in 1.34. So if you have older versions, of course you cannot run your app with the mock server in gateway, because your gateway is on 32. But WebIDE is the best tool, guys, to actually explore all these things locally in your local system. With WebIDE you can actually do it, because WebIDE is holding the latest version. Up to 1.36 they are holding. I think 38 also they have released. So up to 38 you can really make use of WebIDE. Yeah. So new controls, what they've got calendar controls, some new tab container controls, some nice visualization chart, some improvements in the chart control library. They've got this layouts, block layout. They've got smart templates and overview pages. They've improved some navigation services, some more controls they've improved. So all the documentation is here in this single place about each library, what it supports and what it don't. Then comes to 36. This was a major change, and this was the transition time when Fiori 2.0 was coming in. So this was one major change which SAP have done in the architecture, introducing OData model version 2. So there is what we learned in our first course was version 1, guys. Any call which you used to make in the backend has to go separately. But with OData version 2, what they've done is any call which you are making to backend, it won't go to backend until the method gets finished. Okay, and then what it does, it combines all the calls together and makes a batch request automatically to improve the performance. So what they do is, if you are, let's say, have a method, on click of a button you are calling first an entity set for product, then you're calling an entity set for product items, then you're calling for product category, and then you're calling sales order. You made a 4 get calls in the single method. So earlier what used to happen is, the moment it encounters a call, it hits the backend. But now what they've done with V2 model, they will combine all these OData calls automatically into a batch request, and they just make a batch request to the backend which has all these 4 calls embedded. It goes, it fires the backend code 4 times. Within the backend they have the cache to handle all these things, and then it collects the results and send you back. Yeah, so that is what kind of handling it's been done with OData version 2 to just improve the performance. Some more performance measurement improvements have been taken in the jQuery side. They've taken, you can see the information here. So if you're really struggling hard with performance issues on your OData, you can really go back and check here what you really can do, what they've done in 36 to improve the performance. So you have all your answers under one single page. Yeah, to tell the business what is that you really need. So sometimes, it takes a lot of time for us to find the answers. When business asks a question to us as a developer, it takes a lot of time. So we should know where to find the right information, and this is the place where you find the right information for every API version, and what is that supported, what is not. So be very sure before you really make use of a custom app development using WebIDE. Check your server version. Please do that. I have seen cases where developers just use some tutorials. They started building apps. They've completed the apps. They've demonstrated the business. And business given a go ahead. The moment it deployed in the gateway server, everything's halted. Nothing worked. Nothing worked, and they're really struggling nights and nights to fix this up. How will it fix? It won't fix. The framework which you used and to develop on top of it, that framework itself is not supporting you in your system. How will it work? And finally at the end they realized, oh my god, the UI5 framework version was different. The one which we developed is the latest, and the one which is there in the server is different. It won't work, guys. It won't work. So that's a single place. I also like a very important article over here. Let me just quickly show you that, which I like very much. The main important thing to improve the performance of our UI5 application. How can we really improve it? So there was one article I was reading through it. They really give you some good guidance how to improve the performance of your Fiori app. So let me just uh, quickly show you if I can. I'm really not sure if I can find that link for performance measurements and performance. So you really know the mock servers was introduced after which release of UI5 framework. So in the one which is we have today in the gateway, it doesn't have the mock server with the Fiori apps. Yeah, so we don't have that. So performance issues, yes. So here you can see performance issues. How can you really avoid such performance issues? What to do, what to not do. It's a good guide. You really need to get read through it first if you really want to develop a good speedy application. Okay, speed up your app. So you see here there is an asynchronous loading of SAP UI5 library, what they really use. So wherein there were some synchronous calls. So the moment you write sap.m.button, it calls the SAP UI5 library and load the resources related to button, and then you have your application code at the same time. Then due to these calls related to SAP UI5 which you're calling, it actually hinders your actual business calls which you're making to backend, and then overall application becomes slow. So they've introduced a scaffolding template wherein they put everything at the beginning. Whatever controls that you really want to load for UI5, they put it at the beginning. And when your application code is running, at the same time, it's also calling the UI5 library to load the UI5 controls. It's called real parallel logic. So you can, they have done some internal optimizations to run multiple things in parallel in the UI5 framework. So one parallel thread is running, which is loading UI5 resources, and one running, which is loading up all your actual business application resources like OData calls. And then you can see this asynchronous parameter is available, which you really need to code to make it asynchronous. And at the same time, you really cannot display the screen until the all UI5 resources are loaded. So you have got an additional functions available that this is called a promise. So promise says, I will not execute this particular function until the promise is complete. Okay, so they are saying I will first load the component, and after loading the component, then only I'm going to execute this. I'm going to place the component in the body of HTML. So this is a promise. Then means it's a promise. It says after I complete loading of component, I'm going to place that into the body of HTML. So of course, if you would have written it outside the promise, what it will do is, since it's executing really in the parallel, your second line would have got executed before even your component got loaded. Yeah, so that will never work. So these kind of some modification is also required when you're really coding hard to improve the performance. So this article is really helpful, guys. I found it really helpful, and it really helped the developers working with me to improve the performance. I'm sharing my practical experiences, so it really helped the developers as well. So you can see this was also introduced, I don't know which version, but this is the actual scaffolding template what is being used now, loading all the SAP UI5 resources asynchronously using sap.ui.define statement at the beginning of every controller. So any controller which you're coding, any JS file, be the component JS, be the controller for your view, you always mention your resources which you really want to load at the beginning, and then you write your function to get started with stuff. So it runs loading of these resources in parallel with execution of the function. And then it is so smart that when it finds a dependency on a library which is supposed to be loaded before executing some statement of it comes out of parallel mode, and then it waits for the resources to be made available, and then again it switches into the parallel mode and executes it. So this really helped it, and you really need to don't need to worry about it as a developer. So you are a developer, you really don't need to worry about where the parallelization is applied or where not, but your job is to code in the right way, understand the right syntax, understand the right methodology to code it in a way that your application is always speed. Yeah, so reading these article really makes sense. Okay, reading these articles over here, especially the one which is for performance, is really helpful. It's just one page, guys. It can really change the way you're coding. Okay, now one important advantage, as and when SAP is improving these these things, they also don't want every developer, because it's difficult. Every developer, he's working in company, he's coming in the morning, manager is having a stand-up meeting, there are hundreds of meetings you're going into, you're talking to 100 people. You really don't have time, whether you develop, design, you test, you talk to other developers, you train people, you talk to your manager, you do 100 things in the company, or you really come to these pages and learn. Yeah, so what happens is, if you're using SAP WebIDE, the features what they're improving, they're also bringing this knowledge automatically to WebIDE. So if you're using SAP WebIDE and generating your project from WebIDE templates, all these things are automatically being taken care by WebIDE. So your app, when it generates the code, it always takes care of these things automatically, like using OData V2 model. That's also been taken care. Using new scaffolding template, loading the resources asynchronously, that is also been taken care. Avoiding any kind of lazy instantiation of controls, that is also been taken care. All these small things which really makes the performance a bottleneck for a developer are already being taken care by WebIDE. So I will show you these things once you really generate a project. Now we will just go ahead and generate a new project from template. We will see these things are already being taken care. But yes, of course, you are a developer, you should know in depth of these things, why it is like this, why not something else. Yeah, and that will only come when you read through these things. Okay, when you read through these things, or when you probably um, attend some trainings or look at some SDN blogs, but don't really go with the steroids. I completely against going with some fast track courses and fast track steroids, which really making you suffer a lot in the future. Believe me guys, it will really suffer you a lot if you're just taking learning. Okay, 6 steps to create an amazing WebID application end to end. Create your end-to-end application in 30 minutes and deploy in a web server and run it and make your manager happy. It will not make him happy. It will make you into trouble. They expect you to do a lot with that, provided that you really just blindly followed some tutorial in building something. That's my experience and experience of developers with which I really worked in some companies. And I observe that everybody used to is in hurry to showcase something. Oh, I have to showcase this, so let's go ahead and get a quick pill and try to do something and showcase it. But then the business expects you to do a lot, provided you are not equipped with such a big knowledge. So the knowledge will only come when you are daily tracking here the information. At least once a week, look at this developer guide. It's really helpful. At least once a week, look at the developer guide. What's new, which version right now it's being available, what improvements are happening in this section. It's all open, guys. Old times, SAP, everything was so secure under a big briefcase, and the briefcase is logged, and then it is kept inside a tijuri, and that tijuri is also logged. So it was so difficult to get hold of things. But now with open UI5, things have changed. They are really making it open for people. They are really making it so the people and the developer can understand technology in depth. So everything is well documented on this. This is the place where I do get information. So let's get started with the latest version right now, but probably this one which I'm creating will not be deployed in the ABAP system later point of time, but I'm still just want to create and show you the artifacts which it generates in the latest code. So select this one, say next, and I'm going to just give a project name, say sample, and say next. And now here you can see option to choose the system which we have created in our destination. So you can see my gateway system is available, and see it's the moment I choose, it's asking me the username and password. So just use server. If you remember, we also have Anubhav user. We can use that as well. We have granted all the roles to the user. So this is your front-end username and password. Now you can see you're still running in localhost 8080, which is your local server, but it is connecting to the remote server directly. And you see it's saying authentication required for local host only. Though it is connecting to the backend system, but it is still asking you to provide the username password for local host. Why? Because the web dispatcher is responsible for doing this connection through destination. Okay, so your browser never know that if from inside the web dispatcher is server is calling another domain, which is ehp7.sap.in:8400 or 8200, whatever it was. So the web dispatcher is playing an important role here to avoid cross origin resource sharing issue. So click on log on, and wow, you can see all the OData services are now loaded over here. Yeah. Now you must be wondering, Anubhav, how is it possible? What an amazing thing what they've done. How did they do it? They didn't do a magic. What happens behind the scenes? And there's literally no magic. You can also get to know what happens behind the scenes. Just press F12 and go to sources, sorry, network, and choose your gateway system one more time. I think it won't send the request, so maybe I just select EHP7, say cancel, and then I again select gateway. Before that, I just clear this. Watch carefully. I select gateway and see service collection $$ format JSON. Double click on this call. You can see what's happening. See on the top, guys, localhost 8080. The browser is still connecting to localhost. That's your host name and port number. Then it's going to the WebID dispatcher. And the WebID dispatcher is calling in destination, and the destination name was AHE, which we have created in the system in the local folder. And then the the relative path of an OData service. So this is an OData service available in every gateway system called catalog service, which is responsible for loading all the services available in gateway system. So by any chance, if you have to build a tool for your company, okay, if you really want to build a tool in your company which helps developers in your company to get the list of all the OData service, or you just want to impress your manager or your development team, you are a senior level architect in the team and you want to develop a kind of small tool using Fiori which lists out all the OData services available in the system, you can make use of this OData service in the system and then read through the metadata information of service catalogs. It actually returns all the service names which are there in the system. So you can see it's really giving all the service names in the system. So right now I don't have the JSON plugin, hence the output would have been more interesting, but you can just see that it's doing it. So maybe I just see XML if possible. Not really, I don't have the Chromium plugins. Oh yeah, XML is better. So you can see it's giving me the list of all the OData services. This is a service which is available in all systems and it gives me the list of OData services in the system. So a OData service which gives me the list of all the OData services available in the system. What an amazing thing. Yeah, so that's how you can check. So your network tab really helps you to check out something which is secret. So there's nothing secret. You can really go back to network and check. So you can really build a tool in your company using this OData service provided by Gateway to read through all the OData services available in the system. You can also see there's one guy who created, Sandeep has created some service. So this is the service name, its metadata URL, the name of the service, the author who has written the service, what's the title of the service, what is the description, all these things is available. So you'll find all the services in this call, and that's how WebIDE is getting know all the service names. Yeah, so that's how WebIDE is also getting to know all the service names. So maybe just to introduce quickly, guys, I have an OData service which I just activated today for demo purpose, and the service name is EPM Developer Scenario SRV. Let me show you that service. So just apply a filter and say star developer. This is just for practice purpose. SAP gives a service project out of the box and which I have activated today. This is my backend, see EP7. I don't have it in the backend system right now. I have it in the front end system. So I just go to the front end system. And by the way, the report program which we used to update the version, it dumped. So unfortunately, I can't really update the UI5 version in the server with this report, but this is the procedure to update. You can tell your basis guy if at all there's a need. So let me go back to iwfnd/mint service, and here let me just filter and I will choose star developer star. And yes, this is the one. It's an EPM demo service which has all the basic entity sets related to a simple scenario like sales, sales orders, purchase orders, products, business partners, all the basic small entities which anybody can easily understand from a business point of view are available in this. I've activated this service, so I want to really load this one to create a sample project. So I come here and just choose star developer, maybe just say developer, and you can see it's filtering already. This is the service I really want. I select it and say next, and now yeah, this is the place where I really define all the settings. So let me give the title. So somebody was asking yesterday a question, Anubhav, how will it know from where it will picking up the title for the tile? So this is the place where you're giving this title for the tile, and this will be the title for the application as well as the tile title when you configure it with Launchpad. So when you add it in the Launchpad, now this will be the title. Let me put it Spider-Man so that we can remember. So I just put here Spider-Man. And namespace, this is the namespace. You also remember we discussed namespace. What is the namespace? Namespace is what importance it has. Path of the root directory. That's what your namespace is. So I will say typically it will be your company name dot project name. So this is basically just to separate out different projects between teams. So you have a very big company, multinational company, which has business across different geographical locations around the world, and there are a lot of developments happening. So one person in your same company is doing development for, let's say, leave approval, but you are also doing for your department a leave approval app development. But app name is going to be leave approval only, right? So both you will give as leave approval. Now what will happen? It will cause a conflict in the system, right? Because both the apps cannot be stored, uh, because both of you want leave approval, he also want leave approval, you also want leave approval as the name. So now you guys have a conflict. You will be fighting, your managers will be fighting, their VPs will be fighting to get the right name for their teams. So SAP has already foreseen this, and what they've done is they've given a namespace concept where you are working in company, you have a you have your own team name, your company name, your department name. You can give a different namespace, and the other guy can also use their team name, their company name, and use their namespace. So this is also one purpose why practically the namespace is being used. So we can typically give com.walmart. So that's my company name, Walmart dot, let's say I'm working on SD department, so I give com.walmart.sd. That will be my namespace. Description, so this is just a sample app for WebIDE tutorial, and now I can choose object collection. So I want to just use products, and title will be product name. Let me just check here the product name, if it is, yeah, here is the name, and then I choose the product price and the unit of measurement as currency code. Let's see if we can find dimension unit currency code. Yes, we do have it. Cool. So that's my master details. So I also want the binding for line items. So I choose this. In future, guys, I will also show you enhancing it. Right now, just creating a simple one. Yeah. So they don't have an association, hence I can't really see the line items data. So you can see it's not really loading up over here. So I would just say finish, no problem. So just say finish, and then you will see quickly a project will be created out of the box. So you can see this is your project. This is your application which got created. The first file, the moment you open, you see new app JSON. This is what is responsible for loading all the external resources. So you can see this. I was telling about one path and the mapping for the actual resource from where it will be loaded. So anything starting from /web/app/resources will be loading, will be redirected to load SAP UI5 resources. Anything which is starting from /test resources will be going to /test resources to load a service of SAP UI5. So this is basically to load UI5 bootstrap locally, okay? Because you are not using any server here. It's completely local development. You really need to load in your browser the UI5 libraries, SAP M, SAP UI Commons. So in Eclipse, we actually did what we did. We imported a UI5 development toolkit, but it's WebIDE. Here it should reference all the resources which are there in the WebIDE. So it's referencing through these paths. Now interesting thing will be this one, any OData call, anything which is making a call with this path prefix /SAP OPU OData, it's actually hitting a destination with name called AHE. So this is the way it searches for AHE in the destination directory, and from that AHE file it's going to pick up this particular host name and the port name to connect to the right OData server. So tomorrow, if you really want to test the same project with a different server, you just can come and change here the path, or what you can also change is change its destination. Yeah. So AHE to EP7 I can do it. It will then connect to my backend system. Same code will run with respect to backend system, EP7. Yeah. And AHE is my front-end system. So this is how easy it is. Just one simple word change will then go and look for different destination and connects to a different server. Yeah. So this file is really a channel. It's a bridge between web dispatcher and your Fiori app. Okay. Now, if you're deploying this particular project in an ABAP system, you don't need this file. Okay. This file will be ignored completely. You need this file only in WebIDE to tell your web dispatcher of WebIDE to call the OData service where exactly which destination to use, which server to connect to. Yeah, that is the reason this neoapp.json is required. Hope am I clear with the definition of neoapp.json as well as what is the main purpose of this. So I will also show you how will it matches this pattern. So this is just a pattern. Anything which starts with /SAP OPU OData is going to connect to AHE destination. So where is that information? Is your OData information? It's in manifest.json. So if you come here to manifest.json, you see SAP OPU OData. It is starting with this. Yeah, which means anything starting with SAP OPU OData, it's going to look into neoapp.json. It finds, okay, it means talk to AHE. Yeah, because your OData service is supposed to talk to a server, and this server will be talked through dispatcher, not directly by browser. So we did not hard coded here the port name and server number. We just give the relative path of the entire service, and some part of it, if you see here, it's already maintained here in neoapp.json, which is then it's telling that connect to AHE. Okay, and load this data, and that's what your manifest. You guys remember our manifest which we coded in first course. You have a version, you have 3 sections: sap.app, SAP UI, and SAP UI5. 3 sections remains same as it is like we did. And here we have all the router configuration, the application title. Yesterday one of you asked me a question about application title, the title for the tile. It will be picked up from here. You see app title. And now if you really look at i89, it's already defined in i89 app title. Let me search for it, and here it is, Spider-Man, what we have given. So if you create a Telugu file here for Telugu language and put an app title in Telugu over there, the moment you open the launchpad in Telugu language, it will go and pick up the right i89 Telugu file and load all the text from the Telugu i89 file. And in launchpad also you will see in Telugu all the title for the tile. I will show you that by changing these, adding some more files in different language, and then how will it change? How will this change reflect on the launchpad? Remember, we have a local launchpad. Yeah, good news is we have a local launchpad. So that's called Fiori Sandbox. So I can actually show you the integration with launchpad locally without any gateway server, because Fiori gives me concept for a sandbox system. Yeah, Fiori Sandbox. So I can actually do that and show it to you. So let's quickly go through this structure. So we understood manifest.json, we understood neoapp.json. So sometimes, you know, people confuses between neoapp.json and manifest.json. They assume that both are same. They cannot make out a difference, but now you really know that there's significant difference. What goes to your actual ABAP server is this web app folder. Outside this, nothing is relevant for ABAP server. Okay, ABAP server only need these things. This is your actual application code. Anything which is outside this is not at all relevant. You can discard it completely when you're deploying in a web system, because neoapp.json is only for WebIDE to talk to its dispatcher. So dispatcher will call a neoapp and understand which server to connect, where to get the SAP UI5 versions. That's what it does. And inside the web app, you have your controller, your i89, then yes, I told you about mock server. So that mock server implementation is done in this local service folder. We will talk about it in detail. Then you have model. In this, there are these formatters, some model files. All these JS files are present in this model section. Then in the test, you actually have some unit and integration test with the files which option you want to launch the app. You want to launch with sandbox, you want to launch with mock server with mock data, or you want to just do a unit test for this app. And then you have a views. All the views and the views are available in this views section. So that's all in all your app. You all know about all these artifacts now, except the mock server and the sandbox, which we will discuss in detail going forward. But let's quickly run this. I select it and say execute. What it will do is it will run this index test.html file typically. So let me just select it and say run. And you see it's all the calls going through web dispatcher, guys. There is nothing which is directly being called to the server. All the calls goes through web dispatcher. Everything goes through web dispatcher. Oops, it's not running. Let me just expand this and just run it with Fiori Sandbox. Right click, run app in FLP Sandbox. Click on this option. It's really not running. There is some problem. So I think I have not defined the run configuration yet. Let me quickly define it. So right click on your app and choose run configuration, and you can now here choose by default when you click on run how it should run. So it should say run the file without frame, or you want to run it with mock data. I'll show you these options with frame, without frame. So with frame, basically you can choose different views. How will it look like in mobile, in tablet, in desktop, in large resolution screens. So these things you can really check it directly in the using WebIDE launch. Okay, so I just save and run. There is some problem, it's not really running, guys. Let me just check F12. Look at the console, there's nothing literally over here. Why it's not running? There is some problem. Let me just try to run this test HTML separately. So I want to just run as web application. Looks like some problem. There's some problem, it's not really running. Some problem. Let me check. Okay, looks like it's not really sure. Let me just refresh. There has to be some problem, I guess. So it's not running right now. Not sure. Let me try. Okay, maybe guys, I need to check this, why it's not running. Maybe there is a problem with library or something, or maybe my installation. I did not really check it before the class, so maybe I'll check this. But just in today's class, we just talked about the different artifacts which gets generated, the meaning of each artifact, what it does. This PPT is very important for you to remember what every entity does and why it is so important, the way we do things, and where to get the details of SAP UI5 versions. So in the next session, what I'm going to do is I will show you the techniques by which you can actually access standard Fiori apps which are there in your gateway system, and bring it into the WebIDE. And after bringing them into the WebIDE, how do you create enhancements for that same? That is what we will be seeing in the next class. And there are different techniques for that. And what if your company doesn't use WebIDE? They still use Eclipse because Eclipse is an open source. Yeah. So how do they do it? So that is what also we will see in the next class. So hope you understood this part, but I'm really not sure why it's not running. Please try this out in your local system. I'm sure you should be able to do it. Yeah. So let's take up some questions quickly because we are already running out of time. One question. So Fiori Sandbox is communicating with which backend system? That's what Fiori Sandbox is. It's completely a local development launchpad. It is not at all communicating to any server. See, Fiori server, it's just a local launchpad for pure local development. It doesn't really need any server. Your app needs to talk to OData service which is there in server, guys. Your app needs to talk to the service which is there in OData, which is there in gateway, not this sandbox. Sandbox is purely a local launchpad. Okay. So don't confuse don't confuse between sandbox. What I mentioned, I'm using a sandbox server which is just for practicing OData. So that is different. And this sandbox what I'm talking is Fiori Sandbox, which is local launchpad. Okay. So remember there's a difference. Yeah. So sometimes we call it test system also as a sandbox. Yes, you had any questions, please. Ramesh?
Yes, Honorable.
Mm-hmm.
The ES4, still can we use ES4 for this one or no?
Yes, very good point. So guys, there is a free OData server what SAP gives you. It is called ES4, and I have already discussed how to get a user for ES4. I think in the demo class I showed it to you guys as well, how to use ES4 server. So you can still use ES4. What you just need is to create a destination for ES4. Yeah.
But we had issues when you try to access the catalog service. So that's what my concern was. I was trying to access.
If you do have an access to do have a issue with the catalog service, I think there's a possibility to open a ticket as well to them. Okay, so maybe just check it out, the blog. Maybe what I will do is, Ramesh, throughout the week I will try to connect to ES4. I want to also show some scenario on ES4 to all of you. so that I will try to also connect from my WebIDE to ES4. Okay, and let me see if, but I don't think so there will be any issue, because the ES4 is a very widely used gateway server, and a lot of people use it for demonstration purpose. Demonstration of WebIDE, they use ES4. So maybe let me try this. If I do as well face the same issue, maybe I will myself open the ticket and share you the details. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Anubhav.
Cool. So now there are a couple of points coming. Once again, let me